I'd like to briefly talk about some scientific terminology, specifically three words that we use in science: hypothesis, theory, and law. And it's important to distinguish between these three because these three words do not all mean the same thing, and a lot of times I hear people using them kind of interchangeably. We'll start with the word hypothesis. The definition of hypothesis is an educated guess based on observation. So you might make some observations. Usually scientific methods start with some kind of scientific observation. And you might want to ask why something is happening. So you'll come up with an educated guess based on why you think you're seeing what you're seeing in these observations. Now, if you do some testing on this hypothesis and it comes out to be that it seems like your hypothesis might be a good explanation, then eventually a hypothesis could be considered to be what we call a theory. And a theory is a logical, or really the most logical explanation of a phenomenon, something that we've had observations and we've done some testing on it. We might have a hypothesis about why the observations are occurring, and eventually this hypothesis could be generally accepted by the community, and therefore it might be coined a theory. So we have this kind of progression here where a hypothesis over some time might be considered to be a theory. So an example, I guess, of a theory is there was an event that occurred in 1908 on June 30th in Tunguska, Siberia, and there was this huge explosion. It was like equivalent to the detonation of about 15 million tons of TNT, and we have some obvious pictures of it, just laying out millions of acres just flat. And there were many hypotheses that had been put forth onto what possibly caused this. And after we did a lot of observations of and got interviews of people and footages of things, there was basically a theory that was put out that it had to do with basically an extraterrestrial phenomenon, not aliens, but like a meteor. And so this over time has been kind of the general theory, and most people agree with this logical explanation. Now, does that mean that it's true, that this is exactly what has happened for the Tunguska event? It doesn't necessarily mean that's the case, and something could come along later and maybe we have to change this theory, but it's still a theory. It's the most proven thing that we have, the most logical explanation that we have of this event occurring. So the problem is that a lot of people want to deal with complete fact. Well, we deal with certain facts. We have certain facts. We have the event is a recorded fact. We have observations that are things that we want. But when we're talking about truth, a lot of times we can't really use the word theory, because a theory is just a good explanation of true things that we see. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's eventually we're going to call it, okay, it's no longer a theory, it's now called truth. Or what some people want to do is, as we talked about earlier, a hypothesis can kind of become a theory. A lot of times people want this natural progression for a theory to eventually become a law. And that is a problem. This part does not occur. A hypothesis can become a theory, but a theory and a law are completely separate ideas. So what is a law? A law is usually a mathematical description of a body of evidence. So we have things that usually we can use math to kind of see how things maybe work, but not necessarily explaining why things work. And the reason I have a picture of Isaac Newton here is because Isaac Newton did a lot of math thinking about gravity. And he wrote a book called the Principia Mathematica, and in this book, he wrote his three laws, as some of you might know of, and trying to give some mathematical facts and explanation about gravity. And he could do a lot of things with these laws, these Newton's laws, because they explained the orbits of the planets, and they made they really mathematically could describe and predict a lot of things that happened in our universe. Now, what is gravity? And that is something that Newton never discussed in his Principia. He dealt with just laws, mathematical laws, a description of a body of evidence, or he has observations, and he can mathematically describe that it would happen, or predict that other kind of observations would happen, would turn out the way that they would if we happen to observe them. But he didn't explain what gravity is, and it's interesting. In his Principia, he actually writes, "I have not as yet been able to deduce from phenomena the reason for these properties of gravity, and I do not feign hypotheses or theory." What he's saying here is that everything I'm dealing with is mathematical law. I can show why we're having these observations and what other observations we would see if we did different experiments, and I can explain it all mathematically. However, when it comes down to the actual theory of what gravity is or why this force even exists, he did not even put forth a theory on it at all. Now, there's theories on gravity that have come out since then, and there's a whole bunch of them, and different people kind of line up behind different particular theories. But the difference between a theory and a law is that a law is just a mathematical description of observations, whereas a theory tries to go a little deeper and explain why those observations are occurring. So I guess the real key is that hypothesis will turn into a theory, but a theory and a law are separate things. And if you want to try to figure out what the difference is, the idea is if you're asking why, the big question, why, then you're talking about a theory. A law doesn't describe why, it kind of describes what. It just mathematically shows what will happen. But a theory tries to explain why is this particular thing happening. So that's kind of the difference between theory and a law. And it's not just a progression of hypothesis to theory to law. There's a difference between theory and what a law is. And hopefully that kind of explains the differences between hypothesis, theory, and law.